Begin the current Daf, Mesechtes Bava Kama Daf, Pei Aleph. Begin on the bottom line of Pei Amud Beis, where the Gemara is going to continue in a related vein. Actually, it's a very independent Daf, which is one theme, talking about 10 conditions that Yeshua ben Nun had instituted in Eretz Yisrael, which is related back from what we were talking about of our previous Mishnah, which is discussing that you're not allowed to have small livestock in Eretz Yisrael because it could create ruin, which is related to really the theme that we had in Parak Meruba, discussing the halacha of small livestock, which was the last idea we mentioned, versus large livestock, the shiur and the seh, which was the halacha of dal v'hei. So that's what we have the segue now regarding the Yishuv of Eretz Yisrael, certain institutions that Yeshua ben Nun had done. Someone in my community is one of the people that started something which is it's really incredible, called One Siyum. And basically they're finishing Shas every week, that they're getting 2,711 people. I already signed up, from January 28th to February 3rd. I think it's something that they're doing for 1 week, but I think it's meant to be for every single week. So it's onesiyum.com, all of Klal Yisrael, for the schus of the soldiers and the people in Eretz Yisrael, that you do one daf, and in 1 week, Klal Yisrael finishes Shas. So I don't know if they have 7 times the amount. I think they might do it every day. I don't know exactly, but when something like this happens, it's something that's incredible. And I was like, definitely wanted everyone to know about this opportunity of onesiyum.com. Turn to Bava Kama Daf. Today's Daf should be a schus v'achenim in Israel throughout the entire world. Some of this, we're going to see right now. So instead of introducing you, we're going to talk about 10 tanoim that Yeshua ben Nun did. And actually, we'll mention them as we're going through, because the Gemara itself then goes through them and explains them. So, Tadaban, learn the Bryce. It's on the bottom line of Pei Amud Beis. Asar Tanoim Hisn Yeshua. There's 10 conditions that Yeshua ben Nun did. Number 1 is shiur magen, that people should be able to graze their animals b'charshin in someone else's forest, and the owner of the forest cannot object for that. That's number 1. That people should be able to have their animals graze in other people's forests. Number 2, umalaktin eitzim b'sodasehem, that people could collect wood in other people's fields. That's number 2, and that they're allowed to do that. Number 3, malaktin asavim, they could gather grass for their animals to eat, also b'chol makom, in every single place, chutz mitilson, except in a field of fenugreek, which is a type of legume, like from the bean family, where there's grasses that grow with the fenugreek. Whoever tears it out ends up ruining the fenugreek. So although you're generally allowed to collect grass in any field, that would not apply in a field of fenugreek. Number 4 is mekaitmin netiyos b'chol makom. A person's allowed to cut off branches from someone else's tree, which is because he wants to be able to plant it or graft it, and the owner of the field, the owner of the tree, can't protest. Chutz, except migroifius shel zayis, except for the lower area of a stump of an olive tree. So if someone is cutting off from the olives to use for fuel, so you leave 2 graphias, which is 2 fistfuls, like the Gemara says in Bava Kama Daf, Pei Amud Aleph, which, because it regenerates, but beneath that, one should not cut off a sapling, because it's going to ruin the graphy, it's going to ruin the stump of the olive tree. So you're allowed to go ahead and take from branches from someone else's tree, but the lower area of the stump of an olive tree, that would ruin the olive tree, so therefore that you can't. Number 5, umayan hayotze betchila, regarding a new spring that started to flow from someone else's property, which Rashi says that for sure we're talking about old springs, which was in the days of Yeshua ben Nun. But even a new spring that began to flow in the person's property, that they don't have to even pay, as we're going to see about it. They're allowed to go ahead. B'nei ir mistapkim mimenu. The b'nei ir mistapkim mimenu, the people of the city, are allowed to get and utilize that. That was number 5. Number 6, umachaken. This machaken is from like the word of chake, which is a trap. You're allowed to put a net to trap fish, the Yamashal Tveria, in the sea of Tveria in the Kinneret. And even though that was in the tribe of Naphtali's portion, as the Gemara is going to say later on, however, they're all allowed to go ahead and put a net over there. But ubavad, meaning they're allowed to go fishing over there. But ubavad shel yifres kela. But as long as they don't place, he says Rashi, that the way the hunters, the way the fishermen do, is that they put like a type of a peg, and they make like these walls of reeds in the water to trap the fish. That they can't do that, because that's going to be Yamanas Asfina. That's going to obstruct the boat from getting through. So you're allowed to go fishing, but you're not allowed to put like these fences or these nets that block the boats from going over there. Number 7 is V'nifnin lachaya hageder. A person's allowed to relieve himself behind the wall of someone else's field, which Gemara later on is going to explain. Really, that wasn't necessary to make a whole takanas Yeshua ben Nun. That was actually the chiddush of this halacha, was that you're allowed to go ahead and take the stone from the other person's wall to wipe yourself, even though you're ruining his wall. And even if it's a field where saffron was growing over there. So even though that could be possibly a little detrimental, that's you're allowed to do. Number 8, and we'll actually see this one if this one's mentioned independently. But mahalchim b'shvilei hirashus, you're allowed to go into so it's actually a different interpretation. What does it mean, the paths of rashus? But Rashi says that generally people, when they bring in their grain at the end of the season, until when they plant again, so they basically make their fields ownerless, that whoever wants to come in, could use their fields as a shortcut, that they shouldn't have to go all the way around. That's called shvilei hirashus. Why is it called the paths of rashus? Because it's with permission that people do that. Now, Yeshua ben Nun instituted that people should not be particular about that. So although you might have some people that are very particular, Yeshua ben Nun says, no, you're allowed to walk on these optional paths, until the time of the second rains, because the Gemara tells us in Mesechtes Tainis Daf Tezayin, there's times when we expect the first rain, the second rain, the third rain, and that is by the 17th of Marcheshvan. From that point onwards, the seeds start to sprout, and people walking over there would be harmful. So then, okay, you can't walk there anymore. But up until that point, that is permitted. Number 8 is mistalkin letzidi hadrachim, is that at all times you're allowed to walk on the sides of the roads, even at the time when there's grain in the fields. People who are mafker, for old people to get off the actual road and to go into the boundary of the fields on the side, to walk there near the road. And the reason for this is, why would you not be walking on the road? Why do you have to walk on the side of the road on someone else's field? Now you say those hadrachim to avoid the bumps in the road, because what happens is in the summer months, the mud from the winter dries up, and it becomes like, as you see in the paths over here sometimes, when the mud, and then it dries, it becomes these big bumps where people are walk, and the animals went through that winter, and it becomes very bumpy, and therefore it's hard to walk. So therefore, you're permitted, says Yeshua ben Nun, to walk in the fields on the side of the road. Number 9 is vatoya ben akramim. Somebody gets lost in someone else's vineyard. So mafsig va'oila, mafsig v'yored. So what he's allowed to do, he's allowed to tear away vines that are getting in his way, and he can go up and down until he finds the road. So in other words, you're allowed to tear off the branches of the grapevine so that you can find your way back onto the road itself. And number 10, umeis mitzvah koinim v'koimai. A dead person who has no one to attend his burial was found in someone else's field. So the body is the place where they found the person when he was dead, acquires that area for his burial, and the owner of the field can't stop that wherever that person was discovered, that's where you're going to bury that person. This was the 10 takanas that Yeshua ben Nun had instituted, and now the Gemara goes through in detail and explains these 10 takanas. Says the Gemara, takana number 1 of Yeshua ben Nun was shimarin b'chorishin, that people should be allowed to have their animals graze in someone else's forest. So I'm not Papa. He qualifies this teaching. Loiman, we didn't learn this teaching. Eladaka, what's called small livestock. And this is really what relates back to our previous Mishnah, which was relating to Behemadaka, which related to the idea of a seh versus a shiur, the halach of dal behei, which is that of the tzvicha mechira, which was the theme that we started off Meruba with. So that's only with a small livestock begasa in a large forest, where he's not going to be depleting all the trees. It's a very small animal, large forest. That's what we said, that you have to allow someone else's animal to graze in your forest. Oh, daka bedaka, but a small animal, but in a small forest. Or vagasa begasa, a large animal in a large forest, then that's something that would be too depleting. And of course, a large animal in a small forest, then for sure that's not included in this permissibility of the takana of Yeshua ben Nun. That was number one. Number two, we said the same. Are you allowed to collect wood in someone else's field? Again, we're qualifying this teaching. It's not a blanket teaching. Says the Gemara Loiman, we didn't say this only from brambles and thorn bushes. Those are the types of trees which are not so significant, and you could use it for wood that you're getting from someone else's field. But some other tree, you can't just take wood from someone else's field. And says the Gemara further, even these thorn bushes, it only said if it's attached. But if it was detached, meaning, like Rashi says, the owner of the field already put in the effort and he already detached it, then you're not allowed to take it, because obviously the person is intending to use it. He had detached it, that would not be permitted. And moreover, even if it's attached, we only said when it's moist. But when it's dry, which as Rashi explains, when it's dry, everyone wants to use that. You have intention of using that for your fuel, for your firewood, because that's what everyone's waiting till it dries up, then that would not be permitted. And moreover, one more condition is a bulvachulu yisharish. So although you're allowed to take the wood, the branches, but you got to make sure that you don't tear it out at the roots of where it is in the ground. Takana number 3. We said, you're allowed to collect grass in any field for your animals to eat, so chutz misdeis tilson, except for a field of fenugreek. Says the Gemara, okay, remember, is that to say, obviously it would sound like the reason why you can't tear out the grass by the fenugreek is because the tilson ma'alasavim, is because the fenugreek, the grass that grows with it, is beneficial, and if you're going to tear out the grass, it's going to be harmful for that field. Says the Gemara, that seems to be contradicted from the Mishnah Masechtas Klayim, because the Mishnah says, tilson sha'olsa imini asavim, the fenugreek that grows with different types of grasses near it, we don't force the person to tear out the grasses from the field because of a problem about kalayim, because you have different things growing together. No, says Rashi in explanation of that Mishnah, because by default, the guy's going to tear it out because the grasses ruins the fenugreek. So you don't obligate him to tear it out because anyways he's going to tear it out. So that sounds like that it's harmful and detrimental. So how is our Bryce saying from Yeshua ben Nun that you make sure don't tear it out by the fenugreek field because it's going to be harmful? Well, is it detrimental or is it not? So the Gemara gives two different answers. Amr of Yirmiyah, it says, Loi kasha, it's not difficulty. It says, Kan, the Mishnah Masechtas Klayim is lezera, where the fenugreek is there for the purposes of the seeds. Kan, in the Braisa, is lezirin, is where you planted it to eat the stalks. As the Gemara explains, what's the difference? Lezera, for seeds, kashal asavim. Yeah, the grass is detrimental because it's going to weaken the strength of the tilson of the seeds to replant. It's not going to be so effective. Oh, so that's why the halacha is that you don't have to force him to tear out the clam because he's going to tear it out himself, because the machshalak, it's going to weaken it. But lezirin, but if you want it to eat the tilson stalks, oh malala, that's effective for it, because the chikaime b'nei asavim, when the fenugreek is amongst the grasses, so it's mirkava, it's mirachva, meaning it spreads out and it lays on the grass, which like supports the fenugreek, like the trellises of a vineyard, where you have like it's beneficial for the vines to grow on something that's holding it up. Here also the fenugreek has the grasses to hold it up, so it depends. So that's what I'm saying. Is it detrimental or not? Depends if it's lezera, if the seed to be replanted, or lezirin for the fenugreek to be eaten. That's one approach. You could say a different differentiation. Khan in the Mishnah in Mesechtes Klayim that makes it sound like it's detrimental is la'adam, is for a person. If a person wants to eat it, then the grass is going to be detrimental to the quality of the tilson. Khan lebehema, our brayso of Yeshua ben Nun that made it sound like it's beneficial for the grass to be there is if you want the fenugreek for your animal. Why? So the Gemara explains, Kivin del behema hu dezara, because if the fenugreek was planted for animals, so even if you're going to say that the grass, let's say, is detrimental, but asavim nami mebayla, animals eat grass too. So it's like you're okay with the maybe fenugreek getting a little lower quality if you're also going to be able to get the grasses in that too. So that's another approach to resolve this contradiction of Mishnah Klayim, that because our brayso makes it sound like that it's better, the beneficial is going to be, again, either because it's lezirin or because it's lebehema, in contrast to the Mishnah Mesechtes Klayim. But then says the Gemara, a technical question. Meno yadinan, how do we know if it was planted for a person that it's permitted to go ahead and gather from the grasses with the Tanai of Yeshua ben Nun or not? Which many people ask these types of questions, well, how do we know this? So on that Rapapi says, there's an identifying feature, share me share. If it's made like rose, that's la'adam, that's for a person. But if we didn't make it a rose, animals don't care how it's set up, and therefore a person that is doing for human consumption will make it a rose, in contrast if it's for animals. The Tanai number 4, the kaitman natiyah b'chamakom. We said a person allowed to cut off branches from someone else's tree to graft onto his own tree, chutz megrefis shel zayis, except for the lower area, that's the grefis, 2 egrefim, 2 fistfuls of the olive tree, of the stump of the olive tree, that you're not allowed to go ahead and cut off from. Now, Peter Shrib Tanchum B'Rebrais B'Shem Zaken Echad, they explain the name of one elder person that bizayis, by an olive tree, it's kebeya. It's like the measurement of the height of an egg that you have to leave from the olive tree and below, near the trunk, to cut off when you're taking the wood. Bekanim ugefanim, regarding reeds and grapevines, mina pakak ulamala. Pakak is like a knot. The way it's like the wood is like knotted over there. From there and onwards, above that, you're only above the first knot are you allowed to cut the branches off. Now, Shakar on this regarding all other trees, so it's min uvay shel ilan. Uvay is like ibay, which is like it's fruits, it's produce, but what it really means to say is from the soft and thin branches. That's like almost like fruits, almost like when you have hearts of palm. So like from the soft parts, but not from the point of the tree, which means the large and thick branches, like a full-fledged tree. So that you can't cut off from. That's one interpretation. Rashi means another interpretation that chubay, that actually the girsa is not ubay but chubay. You're allowed to cut off from chubay shalilan, which chubay is from the word of like machbei, like hiding, the place where there's many branches, because it's hiding. It's like somewhere inside of it, which is in the middle of the height. And beloy mechudai means on the top, which is the middle branch, which is above and the ikr part of the tree. So that you're not allowed to cut off from. That's from the Chuvas HaGoyim. So 2 different interpretations. What's the part of a regular tree that you're allowed to cut off from, and what are you not allowed to cut off from? Now, min chadash, from a branch that grew and was added on this year, so it's a new part of the tree, which she'eno isa peres, which that doesn't make produce, that you're allowed to cut off. But v'lo min yashin shu isa peres, but you can't cut off a branch that's an old branch that's already producing fruits. Moreover, it's only from a place of the tree that doesn't see the sun. Whereas you continue to bathe, but not from a place that does see the sun, which Rashi says it's all around the sides from the outside, because that's the primary part of a tree, because the sun ripens the fruits over there and sweetens it. so that you wouldn't be able to cut off those branches. It says a pasuk in the bottom, umi meged, and from the bounty tevuos shemesh, the grain, the produce of the sun, which we see where the sun gets to, that's the primary, and therefore that would not be included in the heter of the branches that you're allowed to cut off. That was takana number 4. Takana number 5. If people are allowed that if there's a new spring that began to flow in the person's property, so the people of the town are allowed to draw water from that spring. And Amar Rabbi Baravuni says, but they have to pay him money for that. Says the Gemara, is not like him, and that they don't need to pay money for him. Not only are they allowed to take it, but they don't even have to pay for the water from that spring. That was a takana of Yeshua ben Nun. And as Rashi had added, for sure, the old springs that were there from the days of Yeshua ben Nun. Takana number 6. A person is allowed to go fishing in the Kinneret, in the Sea of Tiberia. As long as he doesn't go ahead and spread out these nets, the Yamid is a svina that's going to obstruct the boats from passing through. Now, but says the Gemara, but again, he's allowed to go hunting, meaning he's allowed to go fishing with the hooks and different types of traps. You just can't spread out these huge nets that are going to block the boats. Now, talking about in the beginning, the tribes made a condition one with the other, that no one should be able to spread out any nets, to block the boats. But again, you could trap with these different types of hooks and these traps. Talking about in the Brisa that actually Yom Shel Tiberia, the Kinneret, the Chelkasha Naftali, so it's actually in the portion of Shevet Naftali. Not only that, but Shevet Naftali, not only did they have the Kinneret, but they also took a portion of like a rope's amount of a trap he had in the south, even on the dry land, to extend his traps for fishing towards the south. Which fulfills what the pasuk says in Devarim, Naftali Omar, Naftali Svaratzin, Naftali is satiated with his desire, Umoli Birchas Hashem, he's filled with the blessing of Hashem, and it says, Yom V'darim Yerasha. The sea and the south he inherited, meaning to say that not only did he have the sea, but also a little bit towards the south and dry land was also his to have his traps over there. I learned the Brisa that Rabbi Shloimy says, Telushin, when you have trees that are detached, Shebaharim that are on the mountains, that's in the possession of all of the tribes, meaning whoever wants to take can take, because it's movable items, and it's the rest of the spoils of the war that the Jews had taken, that belongs to everyone. But if it's attached, it's in the possession of that tribe who has that portion. Now, says the Brisa further, you don't have that any one of the tribes of the Jewish people that didn't have Bahar in a portion in mountains, or Bishvala and in the lowlands, Uvenegev, which Rashi explains that means land that's fields and valleys. And the reason why it's called Negev is because it's always dry, because there's no shade of the trees, and the sun shines over there and it dries it out.
Yeah, so how is it possible they don't have trees?
No, I'm saying on the mountains there could have been trees. Just that there was what Rabbi Shimon is saying is that every tribe had all these different topography. They had all these different types of geography. Yeah, exactly. And in the valleys, in the deep areas. Shnemak says the pasuk in the bottom. Penu usulachem, turn and travel for you. Uboyu ha'amari, come to the mountain of the Mori, and all to the environs. Barava and the wooded plain, Bahar and the mountain, Bishvala and the lowlands of the Negev and the dry lands of B'chevayam, B'gaimer, and by the sea, etc. And Mechinat HaMaitzis, so too you find that even though the pasuk here is Toma Har-Mari, but you find so to B'Kananim, or B'Prizim, or B'Merayim, Shalafneim, the Mari that was before them. So too says Rashi, that's what they had, the Jews who inherited them. Every single one had the Har and the Shvala and the Negev and the Emek. Shnemak says in the pasuk, to all the neighbors, you see all of them had this, and the Jewish people who inherited had every part of these types of lands in their portion. Takana number 7. We said a person allowed to relieve himself behind the wall of someone's field. Even a field that karkum was growing over there. Now, Amar Bava Kama Daf says, I didn't need this halacha to tell me that you're allowed to relieve yourself, ella, but to say a nadat chiddush. Lital emenet tzrur, to say that you could even take a stone from the wall of that person for your needs. And Amar Chizdi says, even on Shabbos, that was allowed to be done. And there's no problem about destroying the wall. And Marzutra Chasid Shokol Mahadir. He returned the rock, and he said to his attendant on the weekday, Zil Shirke, go ahead and smooth it out with some type of, smear it with some type of a clay and attach it very well back to his wall again. So although, he was allowed to use it, he still made sure to put it back. What? Yeah. So that we find that especially things like muktzah, which would be only drabanan. Right. So that's the saying. That's one of the things that mishum kavod abriyas, because of the dignity of a person, he has to relieve himself. So there's certain heterim that, especially like that of stones of muktzah, that they permitted. Here it sounds like actually it was part of the wall. So I'm not even sure about what exactly were they allowed to do. Allowed to do seiser, unless it wasn't a seiser, it wasn't a melacha shentzich legufa or whatever. Maybe there are certain heterim that they had to relieve themselves. Takana number 8 was mahalchim b'shvili harashus, that a person's allowed to walk through the optional paths, meaning that they have permission to walk through someone else's field, until the second rainfall, when the new crop begins to grow, then they can't walk through anymore. Now, Amar Papa, he says, he says, this one, meaning the fields, the properties didan of ours, I feel a tal. Even if dew comes in it overnight, kashila is harsh on it when people walk on it the following day. So he's trying to say that our fields in Bubble are weaker, and even if only dew fell, walking over it would harm the field. So we say when the second rains came, walking is going to be harmful. He says our fields you can never walk, because and even when there's dew, just walking over it's going to be harmful for it. Takana number 9 is umisalkin letzidi hadrachim. Is you're allowed to walk on the misalkin letzidi hadrachim is you're allowed to go on the sides of the roads. That and the reason for that is, meaning on someone else's field, the reason is because when they say this hadrachim, because the pegs, like it's called, the bumps in the road, as we explain what happens over the summer towards the winter. So the Gemara brings a story that Shmuel and Rabbi Yehuda, his two Talmidei Chachamim, Rebbe and his Talmud, they were walking on the road. So Shmuel was going on the side of the roads. Rabbi Yehuda said to him, what do you mean? To knowing Shehisni Yeshua, the conditions that Yeshua made a Philip a bubble? I thought there was 10 things Yeshua ben Nun made in Eretz Yisrael. They were walking in bubble. How are you allowed to walk on the side of the road on someone else's field? I say a Philip Chutz Laaretz, that even in Chutz Laaretz was the same idea. And for sure in bubble, where you have so many people that are traveling, for sure that condition had to be made, and therefore you're allowed to walk on the side of the road on someone else's property. Now, the Gemara brings that Rebbe Chia, another story, they were traveling on the roads, so they went on the side of the roads on people's property. Sometimes you see the streets are not walkable, and you're on someone else's property and have become avsiya v'azl. Now, but they saw that there was someone who was jumping from bump to bump, which were these large jumps, and he didn't want to go on the side of the road. That was Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanus Kamayu. They saw Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanus in front of them that was not going on the side of the road. He was jumping over like with these tractor marks and all these. He was jumping from one to the next on the road. So Amalei Rebbe said to Rabbi Chia, who's this that's showing greatness in front of us? Like as if he's a great Yirei Shemayim. He's not concerned for the tonight the Yeshua ben Nun did and said that it's very difficult to walk, and it looks like arrogance that he's jumping from these marks in the road instead of walking on the side of the road. So Rabbi said to Rebbe, he said, Shem Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa. Maybe this Rabbi Yehuda ben Kanusa Tamidi, who is my student, all his actions he does for the sake of heaven, he's not doing because he's arrogant, showing as a große, Rebbe and whatever, as if he's a big tzaddik. He taka means it. When they came to him, they saw that it was him. So Malay said to him, Ilav Yehuda ben Kanusa, if you weren't Yehuda ben Kanusa, who you're so idealistic, Gizartinu, we would have split the shakach, your thigh, but gizzard the parzel with an iron club, which Rashi says doesn't mean literally that they would have smashed his legs. It just means they would have excommunicated him, but it's like a euphemism, like you say, we would have, really given it to you because, don't be arrogant, don't think you're a big tzaddik, more than Yeshua ben Nun was masakin. Takana number 8 or number 9 is Hatoya ben Akramim, or number 10 for that matter. Hatoya ben Akramim, if someone gets lost between the vineyards, so mafsik v'yerid, mafsik v'ayla. So he can cut away at the vines to get where he needs to get to. The Talmud learned the Braisa, the Braisa elaborates on this halacha, says that if someone sees his friend lost in the vineyard, mafsik v'ayla, mafsik v'yerid, he could cut away at the vines and go up, cut away and come down, until you bring him back to town or to the road. So to the person himself, that he's lost amongst the vineyard, he could cut away and go up, cut away and come down, until he get back to town or to the road. Says obviously, why is he different than his friend? Why would he only be able to cut away to get his friend back on the road, not himself? Says what would you say? It's only by his friend that the yadalech himself, he knows where he's taking him. Like he sees his friend lost, so he knows where he is. The nifsik, then you could cut away the vines to get him back to safety. But the guy himself was lost because he doesn't know where he's going. Like nifsik, maybe we don't let him cut away at the branches of the vines rather than the hadri be mitzri. Let him have to go around and around and around in the vineyard till he finds his way out. Kamash Malan, that's what we're saying that no, that he also could cut away at the vines to get himself back onto the road. It says Gemara, but why are you saying that this is Yeshua ben Nun who initiated this? This is a biblical halacha that you can go and cut away at the branches to get your friend back on the road. Because the time in the Braisa, did we know this halacha of mitzvah Shabbos Aveda, that to return the lost object? But says the Gemara Shabbos Gufa Minayin. How do you know that it's a mitzvah to return the person's body to himself also? It's a passage in Devarim. It says Vahashi Vaisai, and you return him. Loy to him. That Vashivaisai sounds like his body. That if your friend is lost, you have to get him back onto the road. So it's a biblical halacha. It's not from the Takana Yeshua ben Nun. Says the Gemara, no. The Raisu the Koi be Mitzri. Biblical is that yes, you have to return him to himself, but that would mean to go all the way around the boundaries of the vineyard and not go through and cause a loss to the vineyard. That would be according to biblical halacha. So we're talking, Yeshua ben Nun came along and instituted the mafsik v'ayla, mafsik v'yared. Not only, of course, you have to save him, that's the biblical halacha, you can even cut away at the branches of the vines to go ahead and help him get out.
All the comments they made, it seems to be very strange. How often you're going to find somebody that's lost in the vineyard?
Right. Interesting. Exactly. They had to make this one. Right. Well, we have to understand that vineyards were very, very popular in Eretz Yisrael. With the wines that they had, it was the highest quality.
He's so lost.
You could get lost in the vineyard. And actually, we're going to see shortly that that's here. There's a famous, or maybe it's not him. I was doing that last night, but I'm saying there's a famous Mesus Sharm that people get lost in the corn maze and people help you out on the top of it, whatever. But the point is that I guess if you live in the farms and whatever, these things can happen. But yeah, definitely interesting question. And then 10th, really, is a Meis Mitzvah Kan Mekaymer. Well, the Gemara is going to ask that this is we're really up to number 11, but it's really number 10 because we didn't count one. But a Meis Mitzvah, a person who is found with no one to bury him, Kan Mekaymer, he acquires his actual place of discovery to be buried over there. Says the Gemara, really? I mean, that seems to be contradicted from the following Bryce. The Bryce says, "Hamaitzi Meis Mutal B'Isaratia." Someone finds a dead person that's laying in the street, that is 16 amas wide. The halach is mefaneu liyamin seratya. You either clear them out to the right side of the road, or l'smal seratya, or to the left side of the road. Now, what happens if sada bur? What happens if on one side of the highway of the road you have a field that's empty, and besada near. On the other side you have a plowed field. Okay, then mefaneu l'sada bur. Then you'll clear them out to the empty field, because obviously if you're going to ruin one of the fields, you'd rather ruin a field that has nothing done to it. What happens if, let's say, sada near? What happens if one side of the field, one side of the road has a plowed field but not planted, and the other side has besada zera? The guy on the other side of the road has a planted field. Okay, that's already more advanced. But for near sada near, you'll move it to the field that's only plowed. What happens if you stay in beiras? What happens if both fields were not nothing was done with them? Or stay in niras, both fields were plowed. Or stay in zerus, both fields were planted. Then says the Bryce, okay, so then you could move it to whichever one, right side or left side, whichever one you want to. But one thing, says Rashi, is that you see obviously the mace is not kaina mekaimai, because if he acquired the place where he discovered him, so then that would mean to say that the owner of the fields on the right side and the left side could stop you, because what do you mean? Why are you bringing him to my field? It's kaina mekaimai. It's wherever he was found. That's where he has to be buried. So how do you have the right to move him to my field? I thought it's only where you find him. Obviously, it sounds like that it's not where exactly you find him. Which Amar Bibi says no, but mutal al hametza. We're talking about where this person who was found dead was lying on the width of the road, on the boundary, meaning that whoever would pass by would automatically become tummy. So whoever's busy with taharas would become tummy. So there, mitoich shenitin lefanoiset, since they could clear him away because he's blocking the road, so that's when so therefore they could clear him out to wherever they want to. And then you have the question, okay, right side of the field, right side of the road, or the left side of the road, that's what we said. But generally, right, it's wherever he died, it's kana mekayim. So the Gemara asked, wait a second, Amri, sorry, you said that there was 10 takanas you should have been did. We just counted actually 11 things that were instituted. How do you say it's 10? Says the Gemara, mahalchim b'shvili harishus, the idea of that you could walk through a person's field with permission. Shloimo Amra, that was actually said by Shloimo Melech, not by Yeshua ben Nun. If someone has that the fruit has already been depleted, removed from his field, he's done with the field for the season. And he doesn't let people walk through his fields. What do people say about him? What type of benefit does this guy have? What are people causing harm to him? You don't let people walk through for what? The pasuk says, rather than being good, rather be good. Don't be called bad. Says, is there such a pasuk? Does it say you ever found anywhere in Tanakh that says that be good and don't be called bad? Says, yes. Meaning there's a similar idea. That's a pasuk in Mishlei, which was made by Shlomo Melech. Al timna toiv mi ba'alav. Don't hold back good from those who can have it. When you have the opportunity to do it. So that's basically this idea of why wouldn't you let people walk through your field? You're not losing anything anyway. So might as well let people benefit. So therefore that's why there was only 10 Yeshua, because one of them was from Shlomo Melech. Says is there really nothing else that's a takana of Yeshua ben Nun? But ve'ikad Rabbi Yehuda, you have what Rabbi Yehuda said. Same in the Brayso. Yehuda says b'shas etzaz zvalim, at a time of taking out the waste matter of the animals. So a person's allowed to take out the waste matter to the streets. And you could have it piled up over there for 30 days. You're allowed to leave it over there. Now, why would you leave the waste matter, the animal dung in the street? We want people and animals to be stepping on it, because that actually makes it into better fertilizer. It was with that Yeshua bequeathed the land of Israel to the Jewish people to allow them to do this. So you see, that's another takana Yeshua had done. Another question is, which is in Perika Geisel Basar later on in this Masechta, the Tana, we learned the Brayso. Shmuel, who is Benoy Shabbi Yechanan, who is the son of Yechanan, who is Ben Berek, who is the son of Berek, he says, it's not Bezenhu. There's a stipulation of the court. A person could go into someone else's field, he he could cut off this like a branch, like a bow of the of someone else's field, lahatzel nechil shalai, to save a stream of bees that he has that went to someone else's field, and they settled on a big branch of someone else's tree. That if he's going to take it one at a time, they're going to fly away and he's going to lose his bees, because these bees already put their eyes onto this branch. So what he could do is he could cut that branch, and he could give the monetary value of that to his friend. Moreover, but tonight Beznu, another stipulation of the courts is that if, let's say, one guy's walking with a jug of wine, one guy's walking with a jug of honey, and the jug of honey cracks, which is more expensive, that this guy should pour out his wine, and save the honey of his friend, and he'll get compensated for the value of his wine from the honey that he's saving. Moreover, if it's not Beznu, it's also a condition of the courts that if, let's say, one guy's walking with a bundle of flax on his donkey, and this guy's coming with a bundle of wood, and the donkey of the one who's carrying the flax dies, so that this guy should unload his wood, and instead carry this guy's flax, and then he'll take the value of his wood that he's losing out from the flax that he's taking of his friend. We did that condition that Yeshua bequeathed the land of Israel to the Jewish people. So you see, there are other things that are also Tanai Yeshua Benun, says the Gemara, but these things we just said, that was Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shmuel, we don't mention takanas that were mentioned by individual tanoim. The brisa of the Asar Tanoim was a stam brisa. That is anonymous. That's either anonymous and unanimous, but therefore that's why we're saying that. But that which was said by individual tanoim, that we weren't counting. But as Gatin top of Pei Bezim and Alf says, he says that echad, whether we're talking about ilan, whether it's a tree that's leaning into someone else's field, or whether we're talking about ilan or a tree that's near a boundary, even so, maybe you could bring the fruits of that tree and you could recite the parasha of Bikurim, even though really it's not really in your field, it's really in someone else's area. Because with that condition that Yeshua Benun bequeathed the land of Israel to the Jewish people. So, like Rashi explains, the question is on Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan is Nameira. That's difficult from him from the Brisa, because the Brisa said there's only 10 things, not more. But Rabbi Yechanan is saying another thing. Well, it's not 10, it's more. So the rather says the Gemara, Mantana, who's the one who taught Asara Tanoin Shehisni Yeshua that there was only 10 things that Yeshua Benun instituted? Actually, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, who it actually was Rabbi Shua ben Levi who said it, not a brisa. Shua ben Levi is not Moira. Yochanan could disagree and say, no, there wasn't 10. There's actually more than that. The Gemara finishes off. Rav Gavim and Beit Kassel, Masna Behet, he explicitly taught in the brisa. Reb Tancha, Reb Brais, Am Risham Zakan Echad Omani. Who is that? Shua ben Levi, meaning it's not a brisa, and they taught this explicitly from an Amoira. I started to know in Hisni Yeshua, it's not a brisa. There's an Amoira, and that's why he says 10, but Yechanan could say more things. 11, that would answer the other questions also, that it's not difficult because these are the different opinions that we're mentioning, and we weren't mentioning individual Tanai. Thank you to any time. Those things.